This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Coming up on This Week in Agribusiness, American custom harvesters reflect on the challenges of last year's drought-shortened crop. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson, excited to look ahead to the week in agriculture. And it's a week that is full of both weather and policy. American farmers are getting ready to put that crop in the ground for the 2023 season, while harvesters had the chance to reflect on the challenges of last year's small crop.
Yes, Mike, those are the folks who run south to north through the Plain States every summer, bringing in the wheat crop. But I talked about that with Dave Meissner, who is president of the U.S. Custom Harvesters, and the fact that in a drought year, things can get pretty lean.
Yes, it does. I can say for myself, like last year with the drought that we had in Oklahoma, I didn't have much to do. There was a lot of wheat that I normally didn't get to go, and then in the fall I do cotton myself, and didn't have much cotton to do because it got zeroed out. We didn't have the water that was needed, and it hurts.
Every year we run into the custom harvesters out here. You guys come to Washington every spring. Why do you do that?
Because we need to support ag. We are ag. We're a part of it, and we need to let everybody know that we're out here. We care about our land. You know, this land is what produces what we need to eat, what needs to clothe us, and why do any of us farmers or custom guys that's in the ag sector want to discriminate against this land? We need to take and make it grow.
Dave Meissner of the U.S. Custom Harvesters was joined by Paul Paplow. He's another one of the officers of the Custom Harvesters Association, and I asked Paul what they are concerned about these days, the issues they are discussing with folks in Congress.
Probably the top thing right now bugging our members would be the new H2A rulings that come out a few weeks ago. They changed some SEC codes, so now they're changing some of our equipment operators over to truck driver wages. So we're going from a $17 wage up to $25 an hour wages. Some states are forcing overtime on top of those. So that's probably the biggest ruling right now that's affecting custom harvesters in the last probably 2-3 months. It's probably the biggest issue.
How much does the H2A program matter to you?
You know, it's about a third of our members, but it takes up about 70% of our total employment through the U.S. Custom Harvesters.
You need that program.
Yes,
to be working well.
Yes, we absolutely need that program. It's very essential to our business.
Where do those workers come from typically?
For the most part, custom harvesters use a lot of South African labor. There is some Australian, UK labor, but primarily I would say probably 75 to 80% would come from South Africa.
Do some of these folks come back year after year after year?
Absolutely. There'll be a lot of them that come back for 5 or 6. You know, some guys will come back for 10, 15 years.
I have friends who are very reliant upon that program and that migrant workforce, and they see these people are like family to them, as close as family.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of them come over 18, 19 years old, and you watch them grow up. They come over with no experience, and you develop them, teach them how to work, and show them how to run everything. So by the time they go home, and you know, they might be with you 15 years, so they're like another brother to you or son to some of the older people.
Is it troubling that sometimes these farm labor issues get wrapped up in bigger political issues and surrounded by a lot of rhetoric?
Absolutely. You know, a lot of this stuff should be pretty simple, cut and dry, common sense issues, but they wrap it up into total immigration issues where it does have something to do with immigration, but it's not the big picture. This is a very small picture that we're dealing with.
Tell us about your operation. How does it work at harvest time?
So for my operation, we run 9 combines. We start in North Texas harvesting wheat, work our way up through Montana and North Dakota. Then we return to Minnesota, Iowa, and South Dakota for fall crops. We employ all American help. We don't use the H2A program ourselves, but any H2A issue creates a big issue for us because they're trying to steal from our workforce that we go after. So
I've heard of young men who have gone to join custom harvester crews in the summertime, and they look back at it and they say, oh my goodness, what a time in my life, what an amazing summer that it was. A lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, but those guys that I talked to said they wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you very seldom talk to anyone that had a bad experience in harvest. You talk to a lot of people that done it as soon as they got out of high school, a lot of people that wish they'd have done it when they got out of high school. Not a lot of those guys are 50, 60, 70 years old and wanting to do it now because they never got to mark it off their bucket list.
Paul Paplow, one of the folks bringing in the crops for farmers, not just the wheat crop, other crops too, I might add. Paul is from Ocheyedan, Iowa.
Well, thank you, Max. And as that growing season gets started, it's not just farmers preparing to grow in the fields. Weed seeds are also preparing to germinate. Some of them could be resistant. While at Commodity Classic, I had the chance to talk with Tom Wood, President and General Manager of Belsham, about how they're battling resistant weeds.
For us, it's a big problem. For the growers, it's a big problem. It's not getting less, it's just getting bigger. So I think everyone will say resistant weeds, and if you look behind us, you can see some of the big offenders of water hemp, kochia, palmer, lamb's quarter. You can just keep going down the list, and growers are looking for new solutions to handle the problem.
And that's what Belsham has brought here. Second year in a row, we've had Tough on the market. Tell us about Tough. How does it work to get these bad guys?
So multiple modes of action is important for any weed program. And we've positioned Tough as a tank mix to be used with HPPD chemistries and with atrazine. We've also seen it be used very successful with dicamba. But why we say use it with HPPD chemistries is because it synergizes with HPPDs. So it's a contact herbicide, and while Tough is doing its job to kill the plant, the HPPDs are making the plant, I would say, less able to protect itself against Tough. So it's a nice combination, and if you add atrazine to the whole tank mix with Tough and HPPDs, you get a speed to kill because you have a foliar effect going with Tough, and while atrazine has a foliar effect, it also is a systemic effect. So you have a 1-2 there, and while they're two PS2 inhibitors, they bind to different places of the plant. So if you have resistance in atrazine, the Tough is not resistant. So it brings a new mode of action to the grower, gives that little extra power to take your control back up to where you need it to be.
Tom, if growers want to learn more about Tough 5EC, where should they go for information?
One place they can go is tougfonweeds.com or www.belshamusa.com.
That was Tom Wood, President and General Manager of Belsham USA, watching as these resistant weeds continue to take a bite out of farmers' bottom lines. Learn more at tougfonweeds.com. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. Now it's time to talk markets. Joining us this week is Jim McCormick of agmarket.net. And Jim, USDA finally released some outlook for the planting season in 2023. Was the market surprised with some of the numbers?
I think in general they're a little bit surprised that 92 million acre corn was maybe higher than the average trade guess. Bean number was a little bit friendly. Wheat number, obviously a lot of wheat. I think the real question now, Mike, on these numbers is, are we actually going to get all those acres planted? I would believe the 92 million acres of corn, that is the highest number you're going to see. And I would guess the bean number is going to creep up when it's all said and done.
Those large wheat acres that we put in the ground, the winter wheat, Jim, does that mean we could see more soybean acres double cropped later this year?
I think down in the south, Midwest, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, no doubt about it, you're going to look at double crop beans. If you look at dollars per acre, wheat followed up with beans, some of the most profitable acreage out there.
All right. Following the report, have new crop prices changed substantially given this new outlook?
We haven't seen a huge adjustment right now. When it's all said and done, I think what the market's going to be looking at now really is, can we get it planted? The weather has really flipped the switch. Coming out of that USDA report, a lot of people were talking about the snowstorm in the north, and it was kind of a cold, wet spring outlook. The weather's changed dramatically. If you just look at what's going to happen coming out of Easter, we're talking record temperatures in certain parts of the country. I think you're going to see some record planting paces in the I states. So I think it's going to be interesting. So we're going to see a lot of ground get planted and done in that part. But if you go north into the Dakotas, they're struggling to get that snow melted. And now the question is, how quick does the snow melt? The quicker that snow melts, the more risk of flooding, plain and simple.
And that is a deep snowpack in the Red River Valley. Jim, last Friday we also got the quarterly grain stocks report from USDA. Did disappearance over the last quarter tell us anything new about the markets?
What it tells us is the ending stocks are probably tighter than what the balance sheet has been working. Now we get this new upgraded balance sheet this upcoming week, and what that means with the tighter quarterly grain stocks anticipated, you're going to probably see about a 25 million cut in the ending stocks for the United States. So what it does is they're going to increase the feed and residual. Then the beans, we are looking for them to tighten that bean carry out below 200 million as well, which is also a relatively snug number, which should hopefully support the old crop beans.
Jim, I'm glad you brought up that supply and demand report coming next week. Do you anticipate another drop in corn exports?
Right now, I think they're going to pause it at this point. I mean, they could. We're still behind pace, but we had such a good run of Chinese buying recently. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of pause it, let April play out, and then kind of maybe a little bit more adjustments in May.
We're seeing those Brazilian soybeans continue to make their way to the port. Jim, any changes down there to that massive crop in Brazil?
No, it's still a big crop right now. Brazil is selling beans a lot cheaper than the United States. We're going to continue to lose business to the Brazilians when it's all said and done. And that's probably not the worst case scenario, because the reality is we're going to be very, very tight. There is a lot of exporters we talk to think it's not a matter of if, it's just when will we see some cancellations, as some of that demand will shift to that big Brazilian crop.
Jim, have the Brazilians been able to hit critical mass on their export levels quite yet?
They're actually doing quite well. I mean, if you look at the shipping delays, they're a lot better than they've been the last couple of years. So they've actually been able to get this crop out a little bit more efficient than they have in recent history.
All right, things to keep an eye on. We'll be back for more with Jim McCormick of agmarket.net when This Week in Agribusiness returns. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. We're talking markets with Jim McCormick of agmarket.net. And Jim, while we're talking South America, that big Brazilian soybean crop is certainly in the news. We also had Argentina come into the news this last week. They're relaunching their soy dollar export program. Remind us what that is.
Well, it's plain and simple. They are essentially giving their exporters or their sellers a better deal on the peso. Plain and simple. The producers down there are refusing to sell it. They need the income. So they keep trying to essentially do this, Mike, as a way to entice sales. The reality, though, is Argentina is dealing with 100% inflation. So there's a lot of questions about how much actual grain will be sold here, because the producers just rather hold on to the product than get Argentina dollars, pesos, that are constantly being devalued, even though they're giving a bump as an encouragement to sell those beans.
Well, and Jim, we've also heard nonstop for the past 4 months about the horrendous drought in Argentina. Do they even have exportable soy supplies?
Well, they don't, but what they're going to do, they'll have some. They're going to also import beans from Brazil, turn it to meal, then turn around and export the meal. So that's part of the problem. I mean, that's why the government's doing this, to try to stimulate sales from the producers. But they, like I said, they got a half a crop, so the producers, I think, are going to, hold quite tight-fisted.
All right, we'll continue to watch that situation down there. Do we know how long this soy dollar is going to be in effect yet?
Heard about a month is what I've heard at this point in time.
All right, we'll continue watching. Jim, the other piece of news we had come out this week was the first crop progress report of 2023. The winter wheat crop looks dismal. Is there more room to run here in Chicago wheat?
It kind of depends on the funds. The winter wheat crop looks horrible. We know that, but the funds just keep selling the wheat. If you ever get the reasons for the funds to get out of it, I think you could see a nice little bump. But right now, the funds aren't doing it. But this crop really is in trouble. Like I said, we're getting really ideal planting situations in the ice states. You got too much snow in the northern part. The plains, though, they just can't catch a break. They can't get the rain. Now they're getting heat, low humidity, a lot of winds, doing a lot of damage.
But there are folks down in that part of the country, Jim, looking to put cattle on feed. We're seeing some strong demand for feeder cattle. We're seeing some strong demand in the live cattle markets. Where do you see live cattle going as we get deeper into summer?
I think overall they're going to work higher, plain and simple. The supply continues to tighten. All the counting we look at says it's going to continue. The one thing I'm going to caution people, Mike, is it's all about demand. Are you going to get to the point where the consumer says enough's enough? The Fed's probably going to continue to raise interest rates. When the Saudis cut production and Saudis plus, it's makes that inflationary of energy go higher. The Fed's going to raise rates. If that pushes that economy into recession, you might be the demand may stumble, and that may not get to the high prices everyone's thinking on these cattle.
But at this point, the traders in the live cattle pit still seem to be pretty aggressive in their buying.
Well, right now, if you look at it right now, you have to be. I mean, if you've been on spring break, the beaches are full, the hotels are full, airlines, it costs a fortune to fly right now. The demand is still there. If you look at fuel demand, it's better than it was a year ago. So right now, even though prices are high, gas prices are creeping back up, inflation's there, American consumer continues to spend. As long as he does, that will be good for the demand for a protein market.
Jim, any advice to growers ahead of this next week's World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates?
Right now, I think you can look for a little bit of friendliness in the old crop because of the revisions. We're not going to get any new crop numbers. The new crop numbers don't come to May. The one thing I'm going to caution producers probably coming out of this long holiday weekend, we could see this market on a little bit of defensive because it does look like we are going to get a lot of seed in the ground very, very fast.
That news is going to be coming fast, folks. That's Jim McCormick of agmarket.net. Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. Well, folks, our traveling tech expert Chad Colby has been on the road so far this spring, and he's been looking for a better way to mount that phone to get those fantastic images.
In a few places, believe it or not, here in the Midwest, there was some planning activity. Obviously, over the next couple weeks, looking at the weather ahead, there's going to be a heck of a lot more, that's for sure. On this week's tech segment, though, I wanted to show you a new mount I got for my smart device. As most of you know, over the years, I've used a lot of different RAM mounts in the cab of my truck or tractor, but I was looking for something that had a little bit more adjustability, as I do a lot more filming with my smartphone. And I found this on eBay. It's from a company called LaHarp. It was only $35, and I've loved this device. As you can see, you have a lot of flexibility in movement. The cradle where you position your phone is super easy to use. You can just grab those two pins. Very quick and easy to get the device in and out. I really liked it. And just as an example for you, I mounted it on the side window in my vehicle here, and you can see it does a great job. Another big thing I wanted to bring up in our tech segment this week is how important it is to make sure your devices are properly updated, especially when you're using third-party apps. Another huge thing, and about 80% of you in ag use iPhones. That's really not a secret, but there's been a substantial update from Apple that has a really great feature that many of you may not know about. So grab your iPhone, go to Settings, then scroll down and click on General, and at the top you'll see Software Update and About. Click on About, and then iOS version. If yours does not say 16.4, you'll have to go back to that software update and update it. After, during your next phone call, swipe down in the upper right corner and you'll see mic mode. You're going to want to change this to voice oscillation. And after you do that, you won't have to go back and do that again, but you'll notice a very substantial improvement in your microphone. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. That looks like a fantastic tool if you're trying to get some good shots of your equipment running during planting or harvest. And folks, stay with us. Later on in the program, meteorologist Greg Soulier will join us. We'll get a look at what that planting forecast might be. Agriculture across this country is incredibly diverse, and you'll find it in all 50 states. All 50 states that our friend Charlie Behrens is running down here for the Ag States of America. This week, he takes us to Kansas. We're going to learn a little bit about what their ag economy looks like in the Sunflower State.
The United States of America can be very different from one state to another, but one thing every state has in common is agriculture.
Hey everyone, I'm Charlie Behrens and welcome to the Agricultural States of America, where we explore the agriculture of different states and hopefully give you some more appreciation for all the great things that farmers are producing across America. Now, if you're standing in the windiest U.S. city or on the geographic center of the United States and singing the state song Home on the Range, you'd be in... nothing? Okay, a few more hints. The state's also known as Tornado Alley, the Wheat State, the Sunflower State, and the breadbasket of the world. All right, one final clue. There's no place like home, especially if you're Toto and Dorothy. If you guessed Kansas, good job. If you didn't, I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, today we're going to explore how agriculture plays an important part in the success and prosperity of this great Midwestern state. Agriculture is Kansas's top industry, accounting for more than 40% of the total economy. Now, like any good Midwestern state, some of their top agricultural products and commodities include cattle and calves, chicken, hogs, and dairy products. As for some of their top crops, they got corn, soybeans, hay, upland cotton, sunflowers, wheat, and sorghum. In 2021, Kansas was #1 in the nation for sorghum production with 3.2 million acres of this gluten-free ancient grain. In case you're not aware, sorghum is like the Swiss Army knife of agriculture. This crop can be used in anything. It's a livestock feed, but it's also food grain and is very popular in Asia and Africa. It's a whole grain that's used for baking, and the syrup is used in sweeteners. And get this, it's also a natural fuel source. Another popular Kansas plant with more than meets the eye is sunflowers. Native to North America, the sunflower is universally seen as a symbol of life, happiness, abundance, and hope, and it grows all throughout Kansas. See, the Midwest is more than just flyover states. We've got happiness and hope too. I mean, not during the winter, but that's a different story. Now, even before Kansas became a state, people were developing a connection with the flower. Yes, some did deem it a noxious weed, but many more celebrated the significance, hardiness, and endurance of the plant. After statehood, a presidential candidate used the sunflower in his campaign, and it now graces the state flag. Kansas ranks top 5 for sunflower production in the entire United States. Sunflowers are harvested for floral design, the seeds are for snacking, and the oil is used as a versatile cooking ingredient. Now, every sunflower out there is a useful pollinator for bees, birds, and butterflies. And believe it or not, each sunflower has 1,000 to 2,000 seeds inside of it. And if you don't believe me, the next time you're at the Royals game, just count the shells in the dugout. Another top crop in Kansas is wheat. First cultivated in 9600 BC in a region of the Middle East known as the Fertile Crescent, wheat has a profound historical significance for human civilization. It's been said that wheat was the foundation upon which many cultures were built. It's also the foundation of a great athlete, according to the Wheaties box I read this morning. But it's become an iconic cultural symbol in Kansas too. First planted in 1839, Kansas farmers now grow 1/5 of all wheat in the US, and 2/3 of that is exported. Foods like bread, pasta, crackers, pancakes, muffins, breakfast cereals, and bagels all have wheat in them, hence Kansas being called the breadbasket of the world. It is estimated that the average American consumes 134 pounds of wheat each year. And it is possible that most of that comes from drinking beer, but that's beside the point. All right, that's all the time we have for now. As always, go to pivotbio.com/agstates and click on the show icon to explore more about the agriculture of your favorite states and test your knowledge to win great prizes and more. I'm Charlie Behrens, and we'll see you next time on the Agricultural States of America.
Well, thanks to Charlie Behrens for that update on Kansas's ag economy. Folks, you can learn more at pivotbio.com/agstates. 40% of Kansas GDP related to agriculture. They need water in order to get that to perform. Meteorologist Greg Solier joins us now. And Greg, Southwest Kansas in particular is the bullseye remaining of that long-term drought.
Yeah, we've seen improvement over the northeastern end of Kansas, but the remainder continues to be in that exceptional drought category. Matter of fact, we have the drought monitor up, and here it is, and you can see that much of Nebraska epicentered right through western, through southern and far southeastern Kansas into the Oklahoma Panhandle. Tough when you get a couple of spells of rain and snow, then you shift the winds in from the west at like 70 miles an hour off the mountains of Colorado and New Mexico. You dry it out with afternoon humidity at 5 to 10%. There may be some improvement coming down the line, but in the meantime, that is the worst of the drought for now.
What are you looking at for improvement? Is it widespread improvement potentially?
We think, and if you need to get rain going really during the course of the month of April, the first half of May, after that we take on kind of a Mediterranean climate that's generally drier, a hit and miss thunderstorm as you get into late spring and summertime. So there are indications of some modest improvement into the central and southern high plains areas as we move on through the next week, the next few weeks as well. Coming at a price, it's severe weather season, but again, showers and thunderstorms in the forecast.
Fantastic. Greg, thank you for joining us here, folks. Stay weather aware in the coming weeks across the Central Plains.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. The last 3 years in row crop agriculture have certainly been extraordinary. We've seen volatile times in the commodity markets, and importantly, those volatile times have extended out beyond the farm gate, and they've impacted those ag companies. Recently, Max had a chance to sit down with one of the largest crop input suppliers in the world, and they talked about what the future could be.
Oh, yeah, Mike, there's no doubt about it. Corporations that work with farmers have to be responsive to those quarterly results. They have to watch what's happening. But at the same time, many of them have to have that long-range view out there. We were reminded of that the other day as we visited with the Senior Vice President of Ag Solutions for BASF, Paul Ray.
We believe farming's the biggest job on earth, and it's only getting bigger, and our customers are counting on us to help them solve that challenge. And you're right, it takes a long-term investment. We're spending annually around $1 billion on agricultural innovation every single year, and many of those innovations we won't see for the next 5 or 10 years. So we really have to be determined and patient about the optimism and future we have in agriculture.
Part of that, of course, is the regulatory process to make sure that that product is not only effective, but operates in a safe manner. And you check all the boxes along the way then, don't you?
Yeah, we have a real team of professionals at BASF that know science really, really well, know how farmers use their products, trying really to optimize performance so that when we show up to the EPA, we've got a comprehensive label, all the data and all the science behind the product. And again, we have to be patient. To get a product from discovery to market is around 10 years. It's a long time. Typically it takes anywhere from 2 to 4 years to receive a registration for a product here in the United States. So again, a lot of thorough review, a lot of science, so that farmers can have confidence the product works and will perform successfully on their operation.
You talk often about the pipeline, and it strikes me as such an apt description because those products have to be lined up coming to market. You have to be anticipating so many years in advance what that grower is going to need. You have good people doing that.
Yeah, we do, and we have to listen really closely to farmers and what they see as their next set of production challenges. I think one universal truth though is farmers always want to improve their yield. And if we keep focused on that, there's so many different ways we can do that. Whether that be with a seed treatment, whether that be with a new seed variety, whether that be with a new trait perhaps. And of course our fungicide portfolio demonstrates real economic benefit. So farmers always want to push their yield to improve their productivity.
Financial concerns are always great concerns for growers, and we're operating in an area here for some growers of uncharted territory. The younger producers who have never gone through this kind of an interest rate regime. I suppose you have to work with growers in this challenge too, do you not?
Yeah, we're operating in the same economic environment. I mean, we feel inflation as well. We've seen tremendous volatility in input costs for our business, and as have growers. And I think that's created a little bit of uncertainty because, as you say, it's really new territory. So when we were coming into the season, we really thought about that quite intentionally. What could we do that would actually give some farmers relief? And that's why we continue our program around 0% financing for purchasing their inputs from their BASF retailer ahead of the season, and then have harvest terms at 0% interest rate. Now, a couple of years ago that was worth something, but today it's worth a whole lot more when we look at how tight operating loans are becoming for growers, and we're quite happy to finance that. We think that's a real economic benefit for growers in 2023.
Did you catch that? From discovery to market, to the point where the product is available for producers to use, that product development and approval process can take a decade.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
As we get deeper into the spring calendar, of course, weather assumes a more central focus in the minds of a lot of growers. And for meteorologist Greg Solier, it's always a center focus. Greg, It has been active out there in the West Coast for the past several weeks. Is that going to continue?
It will in that particular part of the country, but upstream, as we say, in the weather business, into the plains and Corn Belt locales, boy, you guys have just taken a beating. Quieter and a more optimistic weather pattern if you have the hankering to get out there as it applies to the plains and Midwest. Not, though, into the Pacific Northwest. 2 weather systems on the maps and charts, and I tell you, there's a bunch of snow and ice and water on the grounds here across the upper Missouri Valley, the Dakotas, and points out of the east. We'll add to it with showers and thunderstorms and a warm up. Yeah, snow melt underway for the Dakotas, and some moisture too for Nebraska. That's weather system number 1. The Arctic air moving into the Canadian Prairie and points on northward, but there's still a chill in the air. And then the next weather system coming ashore into the Pacific Northwest. That'll ride into the Black Black Hills, we tap into some marginally cold air and what goes from a snow melt and some rainfall back over to some wet snow. So again, a real quagmire here into the northern plains. Gusty winds farther south, and boy, those winds were hellacious coming off the mountains out of Colorado and New Mexico last week, 80 miles an hour. But there is quieter high pressure. It's a chill in the air into the Pacific Northwest and Northern California with outdoor work in mind later into the week. Into the southwestern states, again, the southern reflection of this dip in the jet stream is a weather system here early in the week moving across the central valleys of California. The rush of high wind probably into play out of New Mexico and Colorado. Boy, last week, single-digit afternoon humidities. Lubbock, Dalhart. That's why we can't get any real improvement, at least over the past few weeks, into the central and southern plains. That may be changing, though. We'll talk about it in the longer range. So there's one weather system making its way, darting quickly on out. New weather system here. Look at the buckle swinging through the southwestern states. More wind potential. Another feature with some shower activity, Southern California. But this will be the start of significant moisture there, Mike, for Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Comes at a price with severe weather, but at least some showers and thunderstorms are the forecast there.
But you mentioned the northern Corn Belt might see a little bit of a reprieve from severe weather?
We think from severe weather, but farther south, a different story into the central and southern plains. And this is the last of these slugs of cold air. Wouldn't be surprised we've got maybe some late spring, almost early summer record-setting warmth for a time, not the way the whole spring season goes for much of the heartland. Later into the week, warm front moves on through. Jet stream runs parallel to this front, so it's not going to move much. We bring Gulf moisture and warmth on northward. Rapid snow melt here. Watch for the specter of flooding and showers and thunderstorms, and these will be severe into the western Corn Belt. We get a reprieve from the moisture for now into the eastern Corn Belt. Big warm up and rain. Some moisture for areas of Nebraska and Kansas. The start of maybe some short-term modest improvement. Busy as well last week. The high winds out of New Mexico, out of Kansas, western Kansas and Texas. There's warmth. There's 90-degree air. Last week it was 100 down at Laredo. Stray shower and a couple of thunderstorms into the Lone Star State. We get warmer, drier, coming off almost 6 inches of rain last week in the I-10 and I-20 corridor. But again, jet streams buckle, Gulf moisture and heat, summertime heat for that matter, and low pressure here means showers and thunderstorms. Good news for Nebraska and Oklahoma. Not so good, Mike. Probably some severe weather potential and high wind farther west in the desert southwest.
Well, take us through the eastern Corn Belt. Greg, what's on the forecast for those folks?
Things quiet down, thank goodness, coming off whether it's been, large hail, damaging wind, the whole tornado scene. At least hopefully you made it through last week's bout of severe weather. Not quite the scale that we had a couple of weeks ago. Good news there. Cold air up towards the Sioux. Chilly high pressure for the northeastern states. Tranquil weather across much of the Corn Belt early to middle parts of the week. And it's a warm front, a buckling jet stream pattern. Some rain and snow up towards the Sioux. Rapid snow melt with a lot of snow on the ground. Minnesota, Wisconsin points on westward. And a couple of showers on the warm front here. But storms will get going late in the week. The start of a wetter trend of the western Corn Belt. Milder high pressure for the mid-Atlantic region. Into the southeastern states, good news. We had rain last week in some of the drought areas of Florida. Stalled frontal boundary there. Here's the next weather system slow to move, and there's Gulf moisture and heat welling up northward. Rapid crop growth and development here. Showers and thunderstorms are back into heavy and severe mode, that is, for the Arklatex back westward into sections of Oklahoma and the high plains.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot Bio Proven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bio Proven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
We're talking weather with meteorologist Greg Solier. And Greg, you talked about the changes that are happening here over this next week. Precipitation. Who's going to get what?
Well, they've got too much of it, really. Well, they'll probably get more. That being snow the past few weeks, almost each and every week the past month, we've had a blizzard come rolling out of Big Sky into the Canadian prairie. Well, this week, probably rain, some mixed snow, but look at the moisture amounts, an inch or two, plus snow melt at the same time. There's been snow on the ground in Grand Forks and Bismarck since about the first half of the month of November. And so we need to keep an eye on flooding here, which may be a moderate season into the Red River Valley of the North. Late in the week, showers and thunderstorms. Western Corn Belt, there are indications of some short-term drought relief here in the weeks to come. Kansas and Nebraska. Moisture here is good news for Florida. Little or none over much of the eastern Corn Belt, the northeast into New England. The western states as well, getting more moisture. We think the last in a string of systems there. But Mike, some opportunity for a little early season field work into parts of the Midwest this week.
That sounds good. Greg, the week of April 17th, what's your trend for temperatures?
Temperatures are very much spring-like, if not a hint and feel of summertime. Looky here. Readings probably record-setting in some spots, close to 80. Will warm the soils, get some opportunity to run through a test run or a pattern here. Maybe some planting as well over parts of the Corn Belt. Warmth all the way to the Divide, some cooling in the Pacific Northwest, and the warmth all the way to the Atlantic coast. But at the same time, you'll have to time it accordingly. Gulf moisture is bountiful. Fronts will probably get stalled out in this corridor. Disturbances will track along them, meaning more late season snow into the northern plains and upper Midwest. Maybe some flooding potential here. Severe weather. Board of Trade back into Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. Moisture, at least, it's coming, drying out in the southwestern section of the country. Additional moisture, too, and probably some planting delays in the Pacific Northwest.
Greg, that potentially record-setting heat in the eastern Corn Belt, does that continue on into the week of April 24th?
We'll see some easing of it here, at least as it applies to the northern and western Corn Belt. We still have these slugs of cold air with snow on the ground to monitor accordingly. The heat, if you will, getting suppressed to the south and southeast. And boy, there's been a bunch of moisture. Of course, you're assessing the fruit tree issues in the southeast coming off the cold of a few weeks ago. But boy, you get this temperature contrast. The winds will be howling up aloft, and they'll drive weather systems. Again, Pacific Northwest, Gulf moisture, showers and thunderstorms, drought relief, but at a price with severe weather. Great Plains and probably some field work and planting delays are back into play across much of the Corn Belt, including some late season snows farther north near the Canadian border.
All right, Greg, well, take us into May. What's your outlook for that first week?
Not real May-like here, because here's some very chilly air into the northern plains, northern Rockies. The warmth does make its way into the northeast of New England, but we still have this sizable trough, this U-shaped configuration, and a compaction of temperatures across much of the heartland. So you come up with this, another busy round of moisture. Systems move from northern California, energize over the southern plains. They lift quickly into the St. Lawrence River Valley, so it's showers and thunderstorms, heavy and severe planting delays, Corn Belt, and more late season snows well to the north and northwest.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
It's a big anniversary year for the Farmall brand and for the Super C Fast Hitch. We have a friend who is celebrating both this year. We'll talk about it in Max's Tractor Shed, brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants, made to make it last. Well, coming up in June, they'll have what they call the Red Power Roundup. That's the annual gathering of the International Harvester folks. They collect the tractors, the combines, the implements, the appliances, everything International Harvester. And they'll be at the Nebraska State Fairgrounds for 3 days. Author Lee Cloncher and I will both be there. We'll be on the program together. Doug Urbeck is one of the guys in Nebraska helping plan the event, and he has a fast hitch display that he plans to bring to the fairgrounds. Since 1953, 70 years ago, was the year International made that fast hitch an option on the Super C model. He knows it very well because he has a 1951 Super C, and that harrow, that fast hitch spring tooth harrow, well, we've seen that one before. It was sold at a Meekum Gone Farm and Auction a couple of years ago. Great looking implement. Now let me share the dates of the Red Power Roundup. It's 3 days in June, the 15th through the 17th at Grand Island at the State Fairgrounds. Very nice facility there. They have a website, rpru2023.com. RPRU, standing for the Red Power Roundup, rpru2023.com. We look forward to being there and seeing Doug Urbeck's Super C from West Point, Nebraska. It's a part of the world that our friend Mark Stock knows very well. He checks in with his weekly report now.
Well, hello, Max. It's a busy week this week with BigIron.com and Sullivan Auctioneers. We've got some hog confinement and nursery facilities selling on April the 11th. The properties are located in Nicollet and Sibley County, Minnesota. 2 1,000-head finishers and nurseries will sell to the highest bidder. Plus, on April the 11th, we've got a bunch of spring cow-calf pairs and some bulls. On April 12th, 2,530 plus items will sell. A lot of planting and spring tillage equipment will be selling. Taylor Implement Company out of Yuma, Colorado will sell a 2014 John Deere 7980 forage harvester. We have a 2019 John Deere L 341 big square baler. Joe Carmack out of Halls, Tennessee will sell a 2020 Hillsboro Endura slide gate tandem axle gooseneck livestock trailer that's like new. Plus, we've got some special sales here. April the 13th, the Nick Gasper Estate sale in St. Edward, Nebraska features 70 items, including a 2014 Challenger MT865C track tractor. There's a Caterpillar D8R dozer, a John Deere 200 LC excavator. Nick also had a millwright business, and they'll be selling the 1995 Grove 50-ton hydraulic truck crane. All this equipment sells to the highest bidder on BigIron.com next week.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. Now we're going to talk to that next generation of agricultural leader. Joining us this week is Colton Roy. He's currently serving as the president of the Missouri FFA. And Colton, thanks for joining us this week.
Yeah, not a problem. I'm glad to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about what prompted you to join FFA. Colton, what was it?
Well, coming from a rural agricultural community, I had a little bit of exposure to the industry, but not anything on too big of a level. So whenever I got to high school, my cousins had kind of been involved in FFA whenever they were high schoolers as well. So I decided to follow in their footsteps, and it wasn't too long before I fell in love with the organization. So I'm really glad that I decided to take that step.
So you fell in love with the organization, began working with your chapter, and then at some point, Colton, you decided to run for state leadership. What was it that made you want to take that step?
Originally, my advisor had pushed me to. It's something that I had been interested in for a little bit, but I'd never given too much consideration. However, whenever I was at the Public Speaking Academy, my junior year, I ran into a student that had a really big impact on my life, and I kind of, for the first time, stopped being a member taking from the organization and kind of stepped into that leadership role and helped guide him through the academy a little bit. And so I realized that it was something I really enjoyed and that I was capable of doing, so I took it to the next level.
And so now you are serving president of Missouri FFA. Colton, what are you looking forward to as the school year moves on?
Well, our convention is in 13 days, so we're wrapping up the end of my term, and I think it'll be really exciting to see all of the members come back together in Columbia and see their successes that they've had throughout the year, and then also watch the new team take on their role and just kind of follow along with them and see what impact they make throughout their year.
Colton, what advice would you have for folks who maybe haven't looked at FFA and need some help?
I think that it's important to take advantage of every single opportunity that you have to kind of find out what you like, and also to stay authentic to who you are. There's no stereotypical mold of an FFA member, and that's something that it took quite a while for me to figure out, but after I realized it, anyone can be a part of this organization, and there's something within it for everyone. And I think that's something that we need to talk about a little bit more so that more students can take advantage of the opportunities that we have here.
That is so true. There are some fantastic opportunities. Colton, do you hope to stay in the ag industry?
Yes, after graduation, I plan to go to law school, and then I want to return to a rural community and practice agricultural estate law with a focus in farm succession planning.
Well, we wish you the best, folks. That's Colton Roy, president of Missouri State FFA. Thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. As you all well know, agriculture is not an industry that stands still very long. We're always changing, whether it's the crops we're growing in the fields or the technologies we use to produce those crops. We also see changes happen at the people level. Our friend Lori Boyer, farm director at KSIR in Brush, Colorado, recently had a chance to explore one of those personnel changes at a sale barn right there in her hometown of Brush, Colorado.
Livestock Exchange is one of our premier sale barns here in Northeast Colorado.
Growing up with a grandfather who was a cattle buyer and parents who owned a dairy, Robin Varlman was destined to spend her career in the sale barn business. She spent many weekends working at Livestock Exchange, first as a penback, and later she worked as a clerk and went on to be the manager. 10 years later, she became the owner. And being a woman owner of a sale barn has had its challenges.
It is challenging, Lori. The first thing I want to say is I think you find the right person for the right job, whether you be a woman or a man. If you were given that God-given talent to do what you're supposed to do and you find that field, then you will excel. The challenge that you come is not usually within yourself, but it's within the people looking at you and a woman as seeing you are in an agriculture world, you're in a man's world. I actually had, when I bought it, I'll never forget my first sale. I had a gentleman come in and said, you know, Robin, he says, I like you, I've known you for years. He says, but you're in a man's world, you're not going to make it. I was like, oh, that's just really nice to start out the first sale with. But 3 years later, that man came back to me and said, man, I need to apologize to you up and down. He says, you're doing a phenomenal job. Fantastic. Good job. Keep the good work up. So it's just I think people put you in a status of maybe that's not where we should be. But ultimately, you know, you go where you're driven.
Varlman is very community-minded as she hosts a yearly meet-in event and partners with other businesses who also operate out of her facility. Livestock Exchange has been a part of the brush community for the past 55 years. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Lori Boyer.
Well, thank you, Lori. It's fantastic to see new faces coming into agriculture to shake things up. We wish our cattle producers the best of luck in 2023. Hopefully that moisture will come and we can keep those pastures in good shape. Folks, thanks for tuning in to This Week in Agribusiness. Reminder, next week USDA will update the markets with their supply and demand estimates. And this weekend, of course, is Easter. If you celebrate, we hope you have a wonderful one with your family and friends.
This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.